Welcome to the Recruitment Hackers Podcast, a show about innovations, technology, and leaders in the recruitment industry. Brought to you by Talkpush, the leading recruitment automation platform.
Hello, welcome back everybody to the Recruitment Hackers Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Dror Gurevich, who is the founder and CEO of the Velocity Network Foundation. I found out about this foundation through a company which I had on the podcast recently, which is also working in the field of background screening. And I had inquired, how come there is no industry consortium building to create a global database of candidate data where they can put their data on the blockchain and they can decide what they want to share with employers and where the data is verified and everybody comes together in a kumbaya sharing of data, but also respecting personal data privacy law. And Daniel at the time actually mentioned your name, Dror, and the Velocity Network Foundation. And I went on your website and saw something which really spoke to me. So I wanted to share this with our audience and get a chance to get some excitement around your initiative, which I know you've been working on for a long time. So for you, it's not an initiative, it's a full-time job, right? So welcome to the show. A quick introduction on who you are and how you ended up working in this very cutting edge, edgy domain of, I don't even know what to call it. I'll let you explain
it. Hopefully by the end of the recordings, you'll be able to evangelize it, not only to title it. So first of all, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. So I'm the CEO and founder of the Velocity Network Foundation, a nonprofit organization working toward data layer underlying the global labor market. And I'm personally been in Asia tech my entire professional life, which is roughly 30 years now. Launched a few companies, sold a few companies. My last role, I was co-founder and managing partner of one of the largest Asia tech system integrators across the EMEA region, working with large enterprises, tens of thousands of employees and above, on rewiring and enhancing and reinventing their workforce management tech stack, and offices across Europe, roughly 400 people, working with brilliant logos. And system integrators are the plumbers of the tech stack underlying the global job market, because we are wiring everything together and we see where's the blockage and we see where are the missing pieces, and we have a very comprehensive bird's eye view on the multi-layered with full spectrum of the tech stack that supports the job market. This is where my understanding of the problem stemmed from, and years ago I've embarked trying to fix that broken data layer, which we all feel is the vision of our space. And that would be a good segue to discuss what is the Velocity Network Foundation. But essentially, it's a venue for the entire industry of workforce tech and ad tech incumbents to come together and agree on a shared set of protocols and a utility layer, blockchain-based utility layer, that will enable the trusted exchange of data between individuals and prospective employers or other stakeholders across the labor market.
Yeah. To connect it back to the consumer space, I think there's been a number of initiatives around building a Facebook where the data belongs to the user, right? Where the data does not belong to a company. And this is something similar, right? Where the data, my personal professional data, and I want to be able to decide what happens to it. It's kind of like my digital passport on the blockchain that I have to give access to for people to access. Am I describing your vision accurately? And Does this work today? Meaning if I want to go and create my profile, I can do that today as a candidate?
Yeah. So if you look at the problem, and the problem is that we have now cars that drive themselves, appliances that can communicate, 4 billion people are connected online, yet we're still relying on self-reported, untrusted documents to exchange information between the workforce and the employers. Resumes, LinkedIn profile, they're all self-reported. And they're not trusted by employers because of that fact. And with most jurisdictions across the globe adopting the negligent hiring doctrine, employers have to vet the individual's credentials, be it contractors, be it freelancers, be it incumbents, be it part-time, doesn't matter, but employers have to vet the individual's credentials, education, past career records, certifications, licenses before they can hire them or risk being liable for negligent hiring. So it's first and foremost a compliance thing on the employer side. And there's no easy way of doing that right now, right? It's literally 100-year-old processes of making phone calls and procuring data from siloed sources. Employers, big employers usually use background screening companies. These are third-party professional services companies that do that work for them.
It costs a lot of money.
It costs a lot of money. It takes a couple of weeks, sometimes 5 weeks. During that time, the individual is idle. And that's on the employer side, right? Tremendous friction and cost added to the employment supply chain and or value chain. On the individual,
if you think about it, just 2 weeks doesn't seem like a lot of time, but if we're talking about every time you change a job, you're waiting for 2 weeks for something to happen, and you change jobs every 2 years, let's say, that's basically let me do the math. Yeah, it's like 2 weeks every 2 years. So it's roughly like 100 weeks, 2 weeks every 100 weeks. So about 2% of all of global workforce is on hold, put on hold, waiting for what? For confirmation on data that should have been already confirmed way past when. So it's a huge cost to the overall economy.
Definitely, but it's also a huge impediment for new and innovative employment models, right? We've been talking about the liquid talent market for a very long time, a world where I can pull in talent as I go and as I need as a corporation, and individuals can share their skills between more than one employer and so on and so forth. But it's not happening, right? While we have these platforms like Fiverr and Upwork, those were not adopted by enterprise level organizations. And if you look at the report, those reports clearly show that only 5% of the customers of these platforms pay through the platforms more than $10,000 a year. That means that no significant engagement has been processed through that platform, and it's all marginal work or small pieces of work. And the reason for that is because you have no idea what are the credentials of the individuals on the other side. There has been so many conversations about the talent arbitrage, where the programmer in Serbia can do the same work at half the price than the developer in Silicon Valley. This is not happening. This is not frictionless today, again, because of the trust factor. So there's a lot of downstream implications that are not only the time, but definitely the friction and the cost of opportunity that is involved. And that's on the employer side. Now, on the individual side, and I'm connecting to what you just said, it's even more insane, right? So I did the time. I went to school. I went to the university. I've earned my certification. I've earned my license. I've worked for a few employers. I went to training. But when I need to prove all these qualifications, I'm completely reliant on third parties to do that.
Yeah, and then
I'm completely stripped of all my.
As you do it once, and you think, okay, I've done it. Now I've already went through the third party.
Every time.
And every time you got to do it again, you got to resubmit your pay slips, your letter of employment, your everything.
It's not even that, because those could be forged or fake. You have to, these vetting processes have to go to the primary source. And if the primary source puts restrictions on the process, or have payment gateways, or went out of business. Or just
busy. Out of business, busy, not responsive.
Yeah. So me as an individual, I'm completely stripped out of all my career assets. I don't have any agency to navigate myself freely across the labor market. And by the way, when I past employment or education are being verified by prospective employers, then my privacy is being compromised because someone knows that I'm looking for a job.
Yeah.
Not even that, they know what employer I've been applying to. So the two stakeholders, the employers on one side and the individuals on the other side, are losing completely from that situation, from that broken data layer.
But I mean, I think everybody has felt this problem and is like, obviously the solution is I should have all my stuff that's verified somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I want to jump to one solution, which I was hoping for like 10, 20 years ago. I thought that Microsoft, well, not at the time it was LinkedIn. It was not owned by Microsoft, but I thought that LinkedIn would do that. And the data on LinkedIn would be as good as gold, and that people would just kind of let that replace the resume entirely. And I don't think that's happened. I think like LinkedIn is still something where you can write whatever you want. And it seems like it's getting closer to Instagram every day than it is to a resume. So what are your thoughts there? Is that like a big missed opportunity for Microsoft, or is they're just not the right player to solve this problem?
So my question, I'm going to ask a question back to you. Do you want to live in a world where there is a vendor or profit proprietary vendor, or any entity for that matter, that has verified, trusted, detailed data about everybody's education credentials, employment credentials, certifications, licenses, and they control and own the data? I don't want to live in that world. No regulator will be willing to allow for this situation. And we've all seen what happened when you have a big platform that dominates a space, right?
It's a good analogy. Are you thinking about like the Fed and the US dollar, or you're thinking
I'm thinking
Google and search?
Facebook. Yeah, I'm thinking Facebook and its third-party complements. I'm thinking Amazon and its merchants. I'm thinking iOS and App Store taking 30% of developers' earnings. Why? Because they can. And if they want to do 33, they will be doing 33. I'm thinking Apple Music and artists. I'm thinking every big platform always starts with trying to make the world a better place and then turns into something else, because that's the DNA. If they want to continue to grow, they have to leverage their new power over that market that they have won. But also privacy is a big issue. Every centralized database is hackable. Every central database suffers from fraud because it's managed centrally. And the way that we went about it 4 years ago is with a complete different paradigm. We call it self-custody, verifiable digital career identity. So the primary source authorities, the universities, the employers, schools, license issuers, they issue the credential to the individual. The individual hold that credential on their mobile device or on some web wallet, but it's stored locally.
Question. Identity theft at that point. Can I pretend to be you and extract your data? How do you protect when there's data on the blockchain? How do you ensure? Is it the same as like Bitcoin, where you need to own the code or the blockchain number, password, whatever it's called? I don't own Bitcoin. Obviously, I'd be able to speak about this more fluently, but is it similar?
So there's no data on the blockchain. That's the beauty of it.
Oh.
All the data is stored locally by the individual, backed up to their household backup service, backed up to their device backup service, backed up to their cloud backup service. It doesn't matter. But it's like I gave you personally a plastic card. What the blockchain serves,
like a USB key,
like a plastic card,
a plastic card even.
Yeah, and then you hold that card in your wallet in your pocket. So the blockchain, what's on chain, are not the data records that the individual has received from the issuer, but rather verification keys that hold no personal identifiable information and cannot be correlated back to an individual, but they're issued in parallel by the issuer in parallel with the credential that is issued to the individual. Now, when the individual will share those credentials with line parties, And the sharing is not allowing them to enter something. It's literally sending them the credentials. So it's a peer-to-peer transaction. So privacy is maintained at all times. No one is aware of it other than the parties that are involved. But when the relying party gets the credentials, they can tap the blockchain, grab those keys, and run cryptography, complex cryptography algorithm that assures them that the credential has not been tampered with, that the credentials came from a reliable source, that the credential came from a trusted issuer, and so on and so forth. So the trust is maintained by the blockchain, but the data is not on chain, which creates a privacy preserving framework that we all want to see in the world.
Okay. It's kind of like saying I can print my own money, but there's an authority that can say this is real money. Kind of, is that a good allegory? But because you're saying I'm going to own the data on my hardware or on my cloud or wherever, it's going to be mine, but I won't be able to edit it so much, right? Or I guess I can
Not
add
at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. Zero. These are like
Zero.
plastic laminated cards you cannot touch. But even if you have a hacker for a friend and she's hacking the lamination and she's changing something, then it will never match the key anymore.
Yeah.
And
so it'll be broken.
And the key sits outside of the hands of the individuals. You cannot hack and change the keys, and that's the nature of blockchain. You can view the keys. Probably someone will be able to hack the blockchain. Everything is hackable, but changing the chain is currently impossible until we have very different way of quantum computing or anything like that. Currently, you cannot break the chain.
And stepping away from the technical, which will be for you to solve and for us to find out, the vision for tomorrow, like when this technology, I gathered from our previous discussion that you already have some adoption, you have some user cases all around the world in different industries, but you're working to get this into a global standard that will power recruitment for millions, billions around the world, right? That's your grand vision. Once that grand vision is realized, if it gets realized, can you paint to us a rosy picture of what the future looks like?
First of all, let's talk about the current situation. So Velocity Network Foundation now has 60 vendors of HR tech, workforce tech, recruitment, learning management systems, student information systems, and so on and so forth. The incumbents of the market that have engaged and embedded the protocols and integrated their platforms to the blockchain so that the whole cryptography, blockchain is abstracted from the end user organization, from the employer, from the university. They just use their own student information system now being enhanced with that new protocol to issue credentials and verify credentials. Same as employers, HR systems, recruitment systems, and so on. So these organizations have been working on new features to their existing stack for a while. Many of them have already launched their solutions, and they're gradually launching their solutions to their install base. We have Mainnet, which is the blockchain network operated by 28 different independent organizations that provide those blockchain management services to the community. So there's no one that really controls the network, but anyone can use the network because it's so decentralized. And we are now seeing adoption in the healthcare industry in the US, mainly with nurses. We have the IT industry in India with hundreds of thousands of university graduates from engineering schools coming to the market with verifiable credentials on their education and skills and so on, sharing those with employers. The financial services industry in the Netherlands is gearing up to deploy and has been doing a lot of work in the last few months. Yeah. And we have a lot of activity in Latin America with schools and universities that are using that. So it already started, it's available. Just speak to your vendor and get them to adopt to this protocol and join the ecosystem. And when we talk about the future, look, every company in the world is an employer. and every company in the world would need access to trusted data about the applicants that they're engaged with and their incumbent employees. And a world where all my career records are on my device and I can share those in a trusted way privately with any stakeholder. That's the world we all want to live in.
I recently created a list of all the employment documents that are required in every country. And I was able to produce more than 100 or so in the US alone, because there's professional body certifications along with academic credentials and others. I mean, the list is long and growing. And some of it is also stuff like related to the medical records. You know, employers also ask for medical records. Is there a way to contain your project, or potentially are you thinking about how I want to have my entire digital identity stored on my card, not just work related stuff? How do you think about that?
So we are totally focused on occupational records. We've started collaborating with an organization similar to ours that builds standards around vaccines and health records, but our only interest in that is with the use case of work. They're building an ecosystem, creating governance and trust, creating protocols that are unique to the use case is a monumental endeavor. So I'm focused on that. If we'll succeed as a team and as a community, I'll be a very happy person. While there are many talented individuals and organizations that are working towards a very similar end game, and I'm sure that we will see a universal wallet in the future where I have everything, right? My identity, my health, my financials, all privately stored in a verifiable format and owned by the individual.
You're 99% sure of that, or 100%?
100%.
100% sure. Okay. So I think that's pretty convincing.
Yesterday I've heard a nice idiom. I may be wrong, but I'm not confused.
Okay.
I'm 100% sure, but I may be wrong.
So if everybody wants it, then it shall become true. And the governments, the private actors, the individual all benefit from this transition. Is there some wind that's blowing in the other direction? That's kind of like some resistance. What's keeping the status quo in place today? How are you going to break that?
So everybody that is making money of hoarding and monetizing private records that are essentially owned by an individual, that these are the entities that will be heavily disrupted from that move that is not unique only to the workspace. We're working in the workspace, but as I said, the EU just announced that they're moving into a pan-European ecosystem for verifiable government documents, from ID documents, passports, licenses, driver licenses, and so on, that follows very, very similar architecture. And there are tons of governments that are working towards that. The point is that in the future, private records, sensitive private records, will be managed, owned, and the individual will have full custody on it. And hopefully, we wouldn't find that in the same situation where it's my data, but someone else monetize it, control it, decide who has access to it, decide what they want to do with that. So these are the entities that will be heavily disrupted. By the way, this is not the background screeners, because background screeners are curator, assessors, auditors of that process. They will change their process. They will make it much more nimble, quick, efficient. But then there are issues of liability. There are issues of curation. There are dynamic records that they need to curate on top of the employment and the education records. So I see a big future for them. And by the way, we have 10 huge background screeners as part of the membership of the foundation that work to innovate and build new processes based on that protocol.
those are the visible sort of top of the iceberg when it comes to background screening. But then there's a lot of companies that are resellers of data that are the hidden part. Yeah.
Those entities that monetize, those entities that hoard and monetize, collect and monetize and control private data, those will be disrupted. And I don't think they will like that situation.
Yeah. It's an interesting battle then. We're going to see this play out over the next 10, 20, 50 years. Hard to say, right? But it's already started. And you have 100% confidence that we're moving towards a world where the individual owns their data. 100%. So I have one more question after this one, but this is the plug-in for you to connect with our audience. Who do you want to talk to and how do they get a hold of you?
So we want to talk to everybody. We want to talk, but the immediate stakeholders for the work that is done by the Velocity Network Foundation are vendors, software vendors to the world of work and education, because everything is abstracted by this group and only the value is surfaced to the employers and universities and the individual. So if you're a vendor, software vendor to the world of work or to the world of education, you should look into the work that community is doing and join us as we fight the good fight.
Okay. And the best way to connect with you is to go on the Velocity Network Foundation website.
Yes, velocitynetwork.foundation. There are tons of resources, materials, documentation hubs there. Everything is public and visible. Everything is free for the public. So that's going to be a good starting point.
I'm on the website now. Their vision is to build the internet of careers. That's very well put. Very good. Thanks, Dror, for the introduction. Now, let's take off your Velocity hat and your evangelizing message and focus on Dror, the manager of human beings, and try to remember a time when, because I asked this to all the guests on the podcast, I asked them about a hiring mistake that they made. And I don't know if she's still hiring. I guess you probably are. Everybody's always hiring a little bit, at least. And I think as recruiters, we always try to forget the mistakes we make because they're painful to us. But for the sake of our audience and for those who are making hiring decisions today, it's good to reflect on things we got wrong in the past. So I thought you might be able to pull an anecdote or a past story from someone you hired that you shouldn't have hired and why that was.
I have so many bad hires in my career.
Plenty to choose from then.
Yeah. So look, it was always about, assessing someone based on chemistry, based on what they say about themselves, based on how they presented themselves rather than on facts. And it's not because we're lazy. It's because these facts are hard to obtain, right? Facts about your careers is something that is not accessible for a recruiter very easily.
It's time consuming, like to get into every single job and find out every task that somebody did.
Who are you? What did you do in your job? What did you excel? And what's your strength? Show me evidence for your skills. Show me. And I believe that the work that is done by the industry with the conduit that will be Velocity Network, but also with the payload that these credentials will include, that will go way beyond just employment records, education, certification, into skills evidence and experience and achievements that will be vetted by the authority, the respective authority. I think that will make a big change.
I got to hold you there to the premise, which was take off your Velocity hat. So you went back to Velocity. You got to tell me about.
I slipped dream. I don't have a non-Velocity personality anymore. I'm sorry.
It's all one person now. Okay. Just to tie it back to a personal anecdote, this person you hired, that was a wrong hire. Yeah. What was the sort of wrongful assumptions that you made about this person?
I've made certain assumptions about their skills and their ability to fit our culture. And I was I was surprised to be disappointed because they've made such a great impression. Their general references, because we've talked to one or two references, I said they're fantastic, brilliant, blah, 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 but we didn't have enough evidence. And then eventually it was so disappointing. The gap between what we felt in the beginning, or what I felt in the beginning towards that person, and the way that they performed was really shocking. Right?
Yeah.
It was not a small gap. It was shocking.
Yeah. Now you think about the damage that it does. It's not just financial damage where you pay a few months' salary before you realize your mistake, but there's also like the emotional and psychological damage to both the employer and the employee of like, wow, I really let this person down, both sides. So.
And the energy. I mean, people talk about budget and time, but there's also energy management. And it takes a lot to onboard a new person especially into an executive role or a critical role. And then you have to do it again and again and again. And it's very, very energy consuming. All right. Great conversation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for walking back along this painful memory and for sharing all about Velocity and Dror. I wish your initiative all the success in the world, and we'll have a follow-up conversation with you offline to talk about how Talkpush can contribute.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
That was my interview with Dror Gurevich, who is building the Internet of Careers for an association, an organization called the Velocity Network Foundation. I think that their vision is great, that in a world where AI is allowing for deep fakes to become available to anyone, any candidate can fake to be anyone else. We're going to really need this kind of technology, which is in the hands of the candidate themselves, and which address a longstanding issue with background verification, collecting the work credentials from candidates. So I think this is a big problem with a great solution, and that the technology is available today to make it happen. So I'm on board with Dror's vision. I think it's only a matter of time, and I encourage all of you to go and check it out, the Velocity Network Foundation, see how you can get involved. Hope you enjoyed this, and you'll be back for more. Remember to subscribe and share. Thank you.